The Hito Hito Numi, also known as the human fruit, eaten by Tony Tony Chopper, is often regarded as one of the, if not the worst devil fruit in all of One Piece. But I don't think that it's all that bad. If anything, I think it may be an extremely powerful fruit. The main reason for the assessment that it's useless is that while Chopper was a reindeer when he ate the fruit, he could benefit from eating a human fruit and turning into a human. However, many people think that if a human were to eat the human fruit, then said human would just be able to turn into a human or a human hybrid, which human and human is same human. We recently learned the true nature of devil fruits, and without spoiling too much, it's very unlikely that a fruit that made someone human would come to be, unless it was perhaps someone lonely and wanted some sort of human companionship, and if they had understood the way to feed devil fruits to inanimate objects, perhaps that could explain that. Maybe someone needed an assistant. In that case, for battle, still pretty useless, but solving loneliness is quite something. Something else that many people point to is that Blackbeard was first mentioned as having gone through Drum Island. He was the reason that Wapol ran away. Why would he be there? Many people think that he was there to find the Hito Hito Nomi, which, if he was, that would be pretty solid evidence that it's not useless. Perhaps he was going after Wapol's fruit, but if that were the case, he would have absolutely no problem been able to get his hands on it. My first thought about what it actually confers is that it could potentially be more of an intelligence-based fruit. Oda has said at one point that if a normal human were to eat the Hito Hito Nomi, he or she would be granted enlightenment. Many people think that he meant some sort of spiritual enlightenment, or that it was simply a cop-out because it really is a useless fruit if a human were to eat it. I don't know much Japanese, but is it possible that when Oda said enlightenment, he meant more of an intellectual than a spiritual enlightenment? Could that be the reason that the greatest genius in the world doesn't even have an intelligence fruit himself to avoid stepping on the abilities of one of the Straw Hats? I mean, just think about it for a second. He was a 15-year-old reindeer when we first met him. And at that point, he was one of the world's greatest doctors. 15 reindeer, world's greatest doctors. You could say that in reindeer years, that's pretty old. In fact, that's the average life expectancy of a wild reindeer. But look at Chopper. He doesn't seem like he's that old. So the fruit seems to have conferred a normal human lifespan. It doesn't seem very honest to think that just becoming a human would make you somehow one of the world's greatest doctors, regardless of how brilliant of a mentor you actually have. The other idea is that it's not actually a base model. First of all, what zone type devil fruit just has a single name? Normally you would have something like the dog fruit model Jackal, or even in the same arc that the Hito Hito Nomi was introduced, you had another, the cow fruit model Bison. Why wasn't that just the bison fruit? Why was Chopper's the human fruit just human fruit? Look at him. Which one of his forms is a normal human? Originally people thought that it was potentially a Neanderthal fruit, but that still doesn't necessarily confer that level of intelligence unless it's representing evolution. Jumping a bit into Japanese, I'll just look at the actual words. Hito is typically translated as person, whereas ningen is the Japanese word for human. So it could have been the Hito Hito Nomi model ningen, but it wasn't. It's, as far as I can recall and can find, it's only ever been called the Hito Hito Nomi. No model, just Hito Hito Nomi. It's the only zone that I can think of that only has the base. Another popular theory about what its model actually is the Wendigo fruit. That would make sense given the location of it in the cold climate, and of course, Chopper's Monster Point. However, more recently, some have begun to go a different route, looking actually back to Skypiea. In Skypiea, there was brief mention of several different gods, and I believe that one of those may end up being the actual model of the Hito Hito no Mi that Chopper ate. That is the forest god. It being the forest god fruit actually fits quite well with Chopper's affinity for medicine. Most of his training has been on mixtures and poultices, very nature-oriented cures, and it also fits quite well with the way the rest of the story seems to be unfolding. I think there's a good chance that each one of these gods mentioned in Skypiea has a devil fruit counterpart, because why would they not? And we may have seen each one of these god fruits already. Just look at the order in which they were mentioned. This could also mirror the order in which the characters with the fruits were introduced in the story. Dragon could be the god of rain, mirroring his apparent ability to control the weather and call forth rain and lightning. Pika could be the god of earth. I mean, this is pretty intense for just a Paramecia type. Or it may be revealed later that it was actually eaten by another main cast member. Another thing that makes this idea really slide into place is that we just met another major antagonist with the power of the forest. Who better to combat the power of the forest than the god of forests? We could have sun versus light and maybe magma, earth versus gravity, also maybe magma, and then forest versus woods. It really just seems like so many things fit into place, but even if that isn't the case, I still don't think that it's actually as bad a fruit as everyone seems to think. There's also the whole speaking to animals thing. You might just take that for granted as being an anime thing, but there's other things like that that people took for granted and got pissed off after they found out they shouldn't have taken it for granted.